when it comes to that, how do you find out your information? Is it like through people you know that tell you, or do you do your own research?
Yeah, how a lot of contacts are very important, really. That's probably they're probably the most important thing when it comes to finding stories. So people at different clubs, within different organisations, sports lawyers, um, and people who are sort of experts in sports finance. All the there's lots of different people give stories and reveal stories, and public relations people that want to they want to perhaps get a story out under a particular angle. They might contact you. So yeah, contacts are definitely the most important thing.
Is there because I know like via reading other journalists' reports of that agents sometimes will contact journalists to try and spread stories to push a certain player's market value up. Have you had like first-hand experience of this happening?
I kind of don't really do transfer stories that much. Um, so it's not one of the things I mean, I've done a couple, but not really. And there's people who specialize in sort of covering football transfers, and they are the ones that are sort of they have bring in huge readership. People are sort of fascinated, aren't they, by it? So I mean, do agents contact journalists and say suggest a player is being looked at by another club and for either to drive up his value or to get him a better new contract? I think that happens all the time. Yeah.
Would you do you believe there is corruption in mainstream football, like mainstream sports?
Um, do you mean in English football or?
Well, I mean, in English football, but also in a wider array of things.
I don't wouldn't I'd be surprised if there's corruption like match fixing eh, generally or outright bribery in English football. I mean, there is a case going through at the moment about the Lucas Paquetá, the Brazilian who plays for West Ham. He's been charged with spot fixing, which is deliberately getting booked so that you know, associates can bet on him being booked in a particular match and win lots of money for that. So, I mean, spot fixing is a very, very serious offence, and you could say that it's corruption. But I um, but that's an individual case. The Manchester City at the 115 charges against them, that's not corruption, but it is basically trying to sort of cheat in a way. If that's proven, that would be them cheating the rules or trying to cheat the rules and being caught out. And the same with Chelsea, where the new owners have self-reported some um, payments under when Abramovich was the owner, payments to agents that were sort of off the books to, for example, around Eden Hazard when he joined, um, making these secret payments to agents. So again, that's sort of cheating the rules. I think it's calling it corruption, which is a crime. You might say is a crime. Is sort of more difficult to think happens.
So like, with the like Man City and the 115 charges, what do you think would be the most likely outcome for that?
Do you know what? I really don't know. I think if the serious charges or if serious charges are proved, then there would have to be like a huge points deduction or being sort of relegated, expelled from the Premier League. Because if you look how Everton got just from spending too much money, if it's sort of if the if the tribunal decides that they're deliberately trying to cheat the rules, then I think it's got to be a huge points deduction.
Do you think that the Premier League will be more lenient on Man City because of their size and their stature in the Premier League?
No, um, it's not the Premier League who decides; it's an independent tribunal for a start. Um, and also, I think. almost like there's going to be so much attention on the outcome of this that there's almost no room for that sort of leniency for that just because they're a big club who've won the Premier League title loads of times.
So, in your recent article about the Crystal Palace and them being allowed to compete in the Europa League despite the owner being a majority shareholder in Lyon, do you think that can create then a conflict of interest between the owner and whether like it's fully going ahead for like both clubs?
I think definitely with most clubs where and it has a multi-club model. So, for example, Manchester City and Girona played in the Champions League last season. They're both part of the City Football Group, and they share staff, they share information. The Crystal Palace and Leon thing is a completely different. So John Textor owns 43% of Crystal Palace, but he only has 25% of the voting rights, and actually he has no input into the operation of Crystal Palace at all. He's almost like a silent partner, and has actually spoken of his frustrations about that. So although he runs Leon, he certainly doesn't run Crystal Palace. So I think they can be operated without a conflict of interest on that. And I think if Crystal Palace played Leon, there would be no sort of jiggery pokery going around. They would both be going all out to win.
Is the so we say like the financial side of sports is something which you're more attracted to then?
So it's sort of like something that's built up and up since I mean, 20 years ago, no one really paid that much interest to the finances of sport or football. But I think when FFP came in, and then suddenly became very important, um, then my sort of interest in it sort of grew alongside. So yeah, so no, I mean, it is something uh, I like looking at, and there's actually a lot of information when a club puts out their accounts. There's actually a lot of information which they haven't confirmed otherwise, which is to me fascinating.
I don't know how much you know this, but with Manchester United, it was reported that they were financial situation was really poor. But then a few days after that, they then put out a plan to build a £2 billion stadium. So how could that be possible?
Well, we'll have to try and get some money funding for it. I mean, they can't do it. They don't have the money to build it themselves at the moment, so that they either have to borrow it or get private equity to do it. But I mean, they would only do it if they got a share of, for example, future gate receipts. So it's not going to be easy to to build up that kind of money. I mean, but Manchester United, it is a club where you think that you could sell out 100,000 seats, and so you have all that ticket revenue to come. So it's perfectly possible that they could get someone to loan them money or invest in it. But it's that means that obviously they will get less money for the club themselves once the new stadium is up and running.
That was all of the questions I had.
All right, no worries.
So thank